This
programming.
conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. So actually, in the last class, we have discussed what is the major difference between R programming language and MATLAB. As you people are aware of MATLAB, and you can do many things using MATLAB. So I have compared R language with the MATLAB. And as I said in the last class, R language or R programming language is basically used for statistical analysis. So in the last class, we have discussed about what exactly R language, what is R language, and what is the difference between R language and MATLAB, and how to install the R language. And also, we have discussed how to run the MATLAB, how to run the R language. So in the R language, how to enter the commands and how to execute the commands. So these are the things we have discussed in the last class. And at the same time, we have discussed, so what are the how to define the variables in the R language, and how to define the constants in the R language, and what are the data types, and also what are the operators that you can perform in the R language, like here. So we have discussed all the operators. So what are the operators we have discussed? So these are the operators. So here we have seen arithmetic operations, logical operations, and also relational operations and assignment operations. So these are the things we have discussed in the last class. So now let us move on to the next one, that is essentials of R language. So here I'm going to cover the second part of the second chapter also. So parallelly I'm discussing both second part of the second chapter and the essentials of the R language. So here's for up to this we have discussed in the last class up to subsetting R objects, and where we have discussed about what do you mean by list, what do you mean by factor, and how to assign NA, that is not a number, not applicable to any value. So right, so here I'm starting from essentials of the R language, right? So here, basically, in the last class, I've executed some of the commands in the RStudio platform. So in the RStudio platform, you might have observed while writing the code, I've used this type of prompt. So it is the basic prompt we use while writing the code in the console window or editor window, right? And each line can have at most, here there is a limitation for the line in the prompt, that is only you can write a maximum of 128 characters in a line. If you want to give a big instruction or lengthy instruction, ultimately you can continue, but only here if it enters the next line, it doesn't take as the same line. So only thing is you need to add plus, right? Or if you open any braces, and you have to just add plus to the next line, beginning of the next line. And see here, when continuation is expected, the prompt changes from this particular symbol to plus symbol, right? So it is the best example for this. That is, I would like to add more numbers, so then I have to use this plus symbol. So 8 plus 3 actually code is, so here you can see 8 plus plus 3. So in the sense, as the line entered into the next line, it has taken plus as the prompt, right? So here these are the operations, parallel operations that I can perform. If I want to perform more operations at a time using the single line, in a single line I would like to perform more operations, and there I can use the semicolon operator. If I use semicolon operator, and all the operations can be performed in a single line, right? So here this is the basic essential of the R language. And here like your MATLAB, we do have more number of built-in functions in the R language. So here, so log x is the basic function for finding the logarithm with the base e. So like that, we can find exponential and log of x comma n, a square root, factorial, round, and these are all the built-in functions that you have in the R language, same as your MATLAB. Same as your MATLAB. So to know much about the R functions available, you can just click R. So I'm going to share the slides, and along with the slides, I'm going to even send the supporting documents. If you just click on this particular link, you can see the list of the functions available. So I've just prepared the slide in that way. So here you can just go through the functions available in the R language just by clicking this particular link. And at the same time, the useful R commands. So the useful R commands are also listed out in the PDF file, and you can just go through all the functions that are available in the R language can be seen by using this particular link, right? So the slides are prepared in that manner. I'm going to share the slides. You can just have a look, and you can have an idea about this particular, right? Similarly here, sorry. Similarly here, MATLAB and R command comparison. Comparison also is taken, and that comparison is also given in the form of a PDF file. You can go through it. And and the next one is in the essentials. Here, sometimes in the result, or sometimes in the arguments, or sometimes in the input, and you might be you might be giving the value like 1.2 E3 in the MATLAB. Similarly, here also we can give these type of values as inputs or as arguments, or as output also you can see these type of values. And what do you mean by this actually here? It means that 1.2 E3 in the sense what? So that is three decimal values moving towards the right. You have to move the three values to the right. That is called 1.2 E3. That is E minus 2 in the sense two decimal points to the left. That is the main meaning of this particular notation. And similarly, every time you cannot expect only the real values as output, or every function or every program always it won't take only a real values. It may take even the complex values, and our language also supports the complex entries. And the complex entries must be like 3.9 plus 4.5 I. I represents the complex value, right? Imaginary part, all right? Same as your MATLAB. And at the same time here, we can also perform modulo operations. And here, when I say, so 119 percentile, here 119 percentile. So here, this one, if I take, what is this actually here? Percentile in the sense modulo 119 modulo 13. So it is going to return reminder. If I take percentile by percentile, it returns the quotient value. That is percent is modulo. Percent divide percent is for returning modulo, right? Right. Next one, a simple code. An example I would like to give. I would like to write a code for finding given number. I would like to compare the number, and I would like to check whether it is even or odd. And simple code you can write. This is a simple code, and that is by using percentile. And it is like your C language, C code or MATLAB code, and it works even in the R language, right? It is the basic that is I would like to, that is it is C language code. The same thing here I can implement in the R language. The only thing is here I have a function, built-in function even odd, and if I write the code like if I call the function even odd of 10, it returns, and it gives the answer whether it is even or odd, right? And similarly here, to check it is palindrome or not, we can write the code. and let us take it as a task. I've given the example for finding the even or odd, and here no need to check for the function. Why? Because already I have given the function here. And now next your task is to check whether any number is a palindrome or not. And for that you need to check the function whether it is available or not. And if it is available, you have to use it and you have to write the code, right? That is the task given to you. And next, similarly here, in the similar to your MATLAB, we do have the rounding functions here, like floor and ceiling. You are all aware of it. Floor in the sense it rounds to nearest integer. That is, if it is 5.7, it takes the least value. That is 5 value. That is previous integer value it takes. If I take ceiling, it rounds to the next value. That is 6 will be taken by the variable. And similar to MATLAB, here also we do have infinite representation, infinite value representation, as well as not a number value representation. And NaN and INF are valid constants that you can use in the R language, right? Simple example, if I say 3 by 0, it returns INF, and all the things can be checked in the MATLAB, in the R language prompt, right? If you have a R language installed in your PC, you can just copy the code and you can check the result in the console window of R language or R Studio, right? So it returns plus infinity or minus infinity, right? Similarly here, you can also have NA, not a number. If any action is performed, any operation is performed, if you get the result like 0 by 0, and it returns not a number, NaN, right? And similarly here, you can check whether any function is a positive or negative, or if it is infinite or finite, whether it is a not a number or an existing number. You can check, and all the functions are available in the R language. Is finite. So basically, these functions are useful while writing the programs. And if at all, if you write the real-time program, and whenever you receive the input from the other module, and other module cannot be controlled by the module is this type of functions. And here you can also use a notation called NA for representation of missing values. So usually missing values in the sense what are a real source of irritation actually here, because they affect the way that model fitting functions operate, and they can greatly reduce the power of the modeling. That is, for example, I have a vector defined. What is the vector here? 1 to 8, and another vector is concatenated with NA. It is a missing value. So it returns when you find the X value. For example, I'm just uh, writing the code, or just taking the function, a probability function, and the probability function values are the probability density function of any random variable taken from a real-time source. For example, an operation is performed and the output is defined as a random variable. That particular random variable is random variable density function is defined, and if at all, if any missing value is available in the is there in the density function, and ultimately you cannot find the result, right? So you need to remove the missing values and return. So therefore, here, for example, if I find, as I said, in order to calculate the mean of the non-missing values, you need to specify that the NA are to be removed. So here to remove that NA, we have a simple command in the R language, that is NA.rm. RM stands for remove. You have to make it true. So you have to make it true in the arguments. So here whatever the number of NAs available may be, all the NAs will be removed if I make it as NA.rm equal to true, right? So it returns the mean value of the resultant values. Yes, 1 second. Voice is breaking. So now, guys, is my voice audible? Is my voice audible? Yeah, yeah. Please check Mr. PUBG. Mr. PUBG, once you check. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and at the same time, for example, a probability density function is defined. Let us use a Gaussian function, a Gaussian density function. And the representation of Gaussian function can be done by using a vector. If at all, if any unknown values are there, and those values will be represented as NA, right? And if at all, if I would like to know where are the missing values available in the density function representation, and for that, you can just to check for the location of the missing values within the vector, what is the function you need to know is dot NA of x rather than x not equal to NA. So if we can try for x not equal to NA, it will give the result for a small number of values, and that is a small vector. But the best way is to use is dot NA of x, right? And here you can also check the index. So that is, you can use whether the NA or missing values available in the vector or not, and also you can find out the index of it. That is where exactly we have the missing value by using the code. One second. Okay, guys. Yeah, fine. Right. So here we have seen how to identify the index value, index of the missing values in the density function by assigning, by checking the vector using the function is.na. And at the same time, you can make the values, missing values as equal to 0. Why? Because if you have any missing values, it is not giving the proper resultant or proper analysis for finding either it may be mean value, or it may be standard deviation, or it may be variance. If at all, if any missing value is present, you cannot do the analysis. So therefore, we need to make it equal, make it 0. So it is the way to assign the missing values with zeros, right? So that resultant here earlier, we got NA here. Now it has become 0, 0, right? So otherwise, the other way is here if else function also you can use. So here, instead of directly assigning 0, and you can check if it is the NA or not. If it is NA, assign 0, else keep as it is. Keep as it is. So that is, you can find n number of ways for writing the code. For writing the code, you can use n number of ways. 2 examples I'm giving, right? Next, and creating a vector. In fact, it is also there in your second part of your second chapter, right? How to create the vector. And you might have studied even in the MATLAB. So that is, even a scalar is also a vector with length 1, right? So here, if I say y is assigned with minus 4.3, so let me take it out here. Vectors are variables with one or more values of the same type. That may be logical values like true or false, integer values, real values, complex numbers, or string like a group of characters, or any raw material, right? So any everything can be represented in the form of a vector. And at the same time, a variable with a single value is often also known as a scalar. But in the R, a scalar is also considered as a vector of length 1. And vectors could have length 0, and this can be useful in writing the functions actually here. So while writing the functions, we make sometimes the length of the vector as 0. So here, simple example. So how do you take the a scalar is considered as a vector with length of 1, then how do you take the length as 0, length of the vector as a 0? Why? Because the garbage values must be removed from the vector whenever a function is represented or function is defined, right? So therefore here, to make the length equal to 0, what I am supposed to do is I have to assign like this. That is, if I say z is assigned with y of -1, that z becomes a vector with length 0, right? So it is used while writing the functions in the R language. That is not predefined function, user defined functions. And values can be assigned to the vectors in many different ways. And like your MATLAB, you can use colon operator, and that is 10 to 16. If I say, so that is the increment value will be 1, the values will be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Or else you can use concatenation function, that is C. C, we have used a number of times in the slides so far, right? If I say C of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, it becomes a vector and it concatenates all the values from 10 to 16, right? Other one we have taken, that is, I would like to take the vector while running the code. From the keyboard, I would like to define. So you can use the function scan, right? So here, the scan function can be used, right? Fine. So here, very, very important thing to define the vector. And one of the most important attribute of the vector is what? Its length, the number of numbers it contains. And why? Because based on the length only, we allocate the memory to it in while writing the program. When vectors are created for calculation from the other vectors, the new vector will be as long as the longest vector used in the calculation. The meaning of it, for example, here I'm defining a vector A of length what? 10, 1 to 10. Another vector is defined with the length what? 3. That is concatenation of 2, 4, 8. If I say A into B, so usually in the MATLAB it throws error, but in the R language it returns the value. Which value here? That is, by default it is going to be assigned with zeros. How many zeros? Equal to the longest length vector, that is A. All the values will be assigned, right? If I say A into B, what it is going to do? 2, 4, 8. 2 into 1, 4 into 2, 8 into 3. And all the values will be, see here, 8, 20, 48, 14, 32, 72, 20. So what is the resultant length here? The resultant length has become now equal to the length of the longest vector. So here, longer object length is not a multiplier of shorter object. It throws the warning, but it returns the value. It returns the value. So here, whether it is right or wrong, it returns the value. At the same time, it returns the warning message. So you have to be cautious while writing the or deciding the length of the vector while doing the operations. That is what the main intention here. Main intention here. Yes, we can use no 10 to 22 2. You cannot use. In fact, in the MATLAB also it throws error. 10 to 22 2. In MATLAB also it throws error. 10 to 20, that is the default increment is 1 and you are making the default increment as 2 in the MATLAB by giving the code like 10 colon 2 colon 20. But in this R language, you cannot use such notation file for defining the vector, right? So you can use a concatenation in that scenario, or you can use a concatenation of more vectors you can use, or simply you can say 2 into a vector. 2 into a vector. That vector is going to, all the values will be multiplied with 2, right? Simple example. Here, some more examples for assigning the vector. And what are the predefined vectors we have in the MATLAB? Max of x, it is going to define what? Max is a function, x is a vector. From the vector, these are all vector operations. Vector operations. That is, from the vector, it is going to identify the maximum value. From the vector, it is going to identify the minimum value. Sum of x in the sense, it adds all the values in the vector. Mean, median, range, variance. All the things can be done, all the functions can be used, and that can be given a vector for finding the result. Finding the result. And these are all operations, and you can check every function, and you can just define x value, and you use all the functions in the RStudio platform, and you just verify all the values, right? These are all operations. Here, parallel minima and maxima, Pmin and Pmax. Usually here are uniform. It is uniform distribution. Uniform distribution. So it is going to return, that is, it is going to assign x with uniform density function. X with uniform density function with how many values? 8 values, out of which the minimum value is 5 and the maximum value is supposed to be 10. Values, all the values will be in between 5 and 10. So here my intention is, as I am taking the random variables, here, even if I assign x, y, z to the same function, and x, y, z cannot be same. X, Y, Z cannot be same. X, Y, Z will be different values. See here. X is random values between 5.8 to 5.4, and it should not exceed 10, and it should not be less than 5. Similarly, Y and Z, right? So here, if I assign X, Y, Z with the density functions, I can find out the minimum value and maximum value, using the function Pmax and Pmin. So this is the way to find parallel minimum and parallel maximum. Subscript and indices. For example, I have defined a matrix or defined a vector with 100 values, and I would like to call only one particular value from the matrix. I can just simply call by using the subscript or indices, right? When we want to select only some of the elements of a vector, selection is done using subscript. The same thing we do even in the MATLAB. Simple example I'll show. For example, here in the brackets, comma 4 in the sense, it calls all the row values, but only from the fourth column of the object. Similarly, if I say 2 comma, it calls the second row, but all the columns of the object. Simple example. Why? Because, see there, I have a vector A. Vector A. What is that vector A? Here I'm just binding here by taking 3 vectors. One vector is 2, 4, 6, another vector is 5, 10, 15, another vector 3, 6, 9. So it is a vector defined. From the vector, I'm just calling a part of the vector. Just a part of the vector. Right? So here you can do all the operations with the vectors, and you can just reduce the human power for finding the values. Right? Man. Just simple examples I've shown. The operation that you can perform on the vectors. That is simple example here. If I say x into x less than 5, and this x less than 5 will take the values of the object x where we have the values less than 5. And those values are going to be multiplied with x. Right? Some examples. Just some examples. Right? For example, I'm taking a vector y, and the vector values are sorted. And here reverse of that particular sorting. Some applications. address within vectors. That is, I would like to check. For example, I'm taking a vector. That vector is given some density function, and I would like to know where exactly I have the value. For example, I'm defining the vector with the random variable density function, and I have checked the mean value. The mean value, though I have the maximum value as 10, the mean value I'm getting 0.5. Let us assume 0.5. So that is because we have some some components or some values in the object with very less value. So I would like to check where exactly I have the particular less value in the density function. And in that case, I can use these functions, which of y greater than 5. That is, how many values are with y greater than 5, that you can check here, right? Some examples, that is, normal random variable density function, normal density function is assigned to xv. Xv of sequence of 25 comma length of xv comma 25. So it is going to return what? How many values are taken for xv? 1000 values. The maximum value is here, 1000 values are taken. Just to check. So here, which function, finally what I can conclude here is, which function is used to check which value is existing at what position or what index, right? Huh. And similarly, you can find the closest value to any required value here. For example, I would like to know the value in the random variable, I mean in the object xv, which is near to 108. I can use the function closest. So all these functions are useful in the statistical analysis, especially in the statistical analysis, right? Some more operations, and here some assignment is given here. For example, here the trim dot mean is a function, and what is the trim dot mean? And let us see how to write the function in the next chapter. No need to worry. So here the function is what? X is the variable here. And what is the trim dot mean? The trim dot mean code is what? Mean of sort of x of minus c of 1 comma length of x. So that is the code. That is the code. So it is giving what? Trim dot mean of x. If I call the function trim dot mean of x by passing the argument x, it is returning 5.2. What is that x? X is nothing but an object or a vector, or it may be a density function of the random variable. If I pass that argument, so it is returning 5.2. Why? Because the trim dot mean is given a code here. The function is defined with code mean of sort of x of minus concatenation of 1 comma length of x. So like that you can write the functions even for doing operations on the vector, right? Fine. Logical arithmetic. So logical arithmetic in the sense, it checks whether it is a positive value or less than 0 or 0. So whatever the value which is 0 or less than 0 will be considered as false in the R language, right? Just some examples for arithmetic operation, I mean logic operations, right? So here even you can do the logical operations like logical not, logical and, logical or, less than or greater than. All these operations can be done. Simple thing. Another one is repeats. Repeats is a function, built-in function, so which is going to repeat the number of values. For example, here number of values. So 9 repetition of 9 comma 5. It repeats the number 9 for 5 times. Repetition of a vector for 2 times. What is the vector here? 1 to 4, right? And the repetition of a vector and in the vector each element 2 times. So it is the way to define the vector. I mean, it is the way to define the vector using the repetition function, right? And each 2 times, and the entire thing is 3 times. So here, these many ways you can define the vector, a new vector using the repetition function, where you need the repetition of values, right? Another one is generate factor levels here. So a function, a built-in function is available in the R language, that is GL. GL stands for generate levels. Basically, it is useful when you want to encode long vectors or factor levels. Factor levels in the sense, for example, here in the class, I'm taking the marks of 120 students, and in the marks I have different ranges. Like some people are with 1 to 5, some people are with 5 to 10, some people are with 10 to 20. So here I can just take them as factors. See, GL of up to with repeats of and total length. 3 arguments can be used here. See here, GL of comma 3. So how many levels we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Why? Because I have value, the vector with value 1 for some elements, 2 with some elements, 3 with some elements, 4 some elements. So these are called levels. These are called levels or factor levels. Factor levels, right? Similarly, like this. So even if you compare these two are returning here 24 values are taken. 24 levels are taken. Why? Because here first one is up to 4. Second one is with repetition. That is 3 times must be repeated. What must be the length? 24. And for in this, how many levels I have? Only 4 levels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And even I can just generate labels also. Somebody asked out. Yeah. Factor levels in the sense, first of all, factor levels in the sense what? What are the first, for example, if I define any vector, let me take a simple example, same example which I have taken. And in the class, out of 120 students, 30 students got 5 marks and 20 students got 10 marks, and there is no value in between 5 and 10, rounding up to 10 marks. And some students got 12 marks, some students got 18 marks, some students got 20 marks. So even if I write a vector with 120 students, and that particular vector will have 120 elements, but only the values will be either 5 or 10 or 12 or 18 or 20. And those 5 values are called levels. And what are the levels? 5, 10, 12, 18 and 20. And how many elements with the level 5? That can be checked. How many elements with the level 10? That can be checked, right? So that is called factor levels. And to generate the factor levels that are there in the vector, we can use GL. We can use GL. Factor levels in the sense, that is the how many levels I have in a vector already defined. Already this part is discussed while discussing the factors in the last class, but it is a predefined function for generating the levels. Right? Next, these are already discussed. Sample functions. In the last class only I have discussed all these. Right. Factors. Factors are used to represent categorical data and can be unordered or ordered. Just now I've said simple example, where marks with the values 5 or 10 or 12 or 18 or 20. So now coming to the factors. So factors is what? Factors are used to represent categorical data. Categorical data and can be unordered or ordered. So I may not get the first roll number to 20 roll number with 5 marks 5 or 21 to 40 with marks 10. I cannot expect in that way, right? That may be ordered or unordered. Categorical data. And one can think of a factor as an integer vector where each integer has a label. Just I'll show the example here. So factors are important basically when statistical modeling is expected. And here, like this, simple see here. Example, I have concatenation of yes, yes, no, yes, no. So how many factors are there? And what is that vector actually? Vector is having how many elements? 5 elements. 5 elements. And that vector is assigned to an object x. X. And how many factors I have? Only 2 factors. No yes. No yes. As I said, 10, 5, 10, 12, 18, and 20. That is called factor. That is called factor. Right? Table of x. How many yes we have? How many no's we have? I's are 3 and no's are right. That is if I call the function table of x and if I define a vector with all the marks, if I say table of marks and it returns first levels factors, levels are factors, it will show yes 5 factors 5, 10, 12, 18, 20. If I call table of marks, yes, number of students with 5, number of students with 10 marks, number of students with 12 marks, number of students with 18, and number of students with 20. And like that, I can get the result, right? So it's all about the first chapter actually here. And in the first chapter, we have seen what is R language and what are the, how to install it and how to run the code and what are the data types and what are the constants, what are the variables and how to define the vector, how to do the operations like arithmetic operations, logical operations, relational operations, and relation operations and all the operations that you can perform on the vectors is discussed. And also we have seen what is list and what is factor, right? So these are things we have discussed so far. And let us move on to the next second chapter here, the continuation to it. And I am just right here in the second chapter we go with control structure actually. So you are all aware of what do you mean by control statement. Control statement you might have used in the C language or you might have used in the MATLAB, right? So here the commonly used control structures are, you're all aware of it, that is if and else, for loop, while, repeat, break, next, and these are all commonly used control structures. And these structures can be used in the R language also. And if and else is for what? Testing a condition and acting on it, basically. And for is what? For is for execution of a loop for fixed number of times. Whereas while is for what? For execution of a loop until the while condition is true. A repetition is what? Execution of an infinite loop. Repeat. And you have to break it to stop. And break is for execution of the loop. And the next is for skipping the iteration loop from one to other one. Iteration of a loop. So these are all the control statement. We are just controlling the code by using these particular functions. Structures, control structures, right? First, if else. And basically, this is syntax for if else. The common syntax for any language, common syntax for any platform. If condition is true, do something, or else continue with the rest of the code. If condition one is true, do something else if again check for another condition, do something, or else do something different, right? So this is the common syntax for any language, or only simple if else, if else, if else, right? Simple example is taken in the in the R language, right? Generation of uniform random variable. What is the function we use to generate the uniform random variable? A uniform density function. X is assigned with R uniform of 1 comma 0 comma 10. So here I am writing the code like if X is greater than 3, assign Y with 10, else assign Y with 0, right? So this is the code I have taken. So here when I run this code, here it is going to generate the uniform density function. If I run this code, every time I am going to get the value as greater than 3. Every time I am going to get the code as greater than 3. So let me run the code here. Let us see output of it. For example, here, if I say, so what is the object defined here? Variable defined here, y. So if I call y, it is returning what? 10. So that is, if I check the x value here. So what is the x here? X is uniform density function, 1 comma uniform value, 1 comma 0 comma, sorry, 1 in between 0 and 10. So what do you mean by this? That particular x is having only one value, that value is only in between 0 and 10. And if I run the same code again, let us see here. Earlier, the x value is, just see here, see the environment here. Earlier, the x value is 9 point. Now the x value is 8 point. For example, if I run the same code again, now x is given with 3 point, right? And now if I run the same, the x is given with 4 point. So every time it is giving greater than 3. Therefore, if you call that particular, if you check the value of y here, every time it will be 10. That is the if else is used here, right? The expression can also be written in different. There. Simple code. Simple code. If y is assigned with what value, the condition is checked and it is assigned with 10. If the condition is not satisfied, assign with 0. Simple way to write the code. That is, these two are using the control loops only. But different ways, the code is written in the different ways. For loops. The for loop, what do you mean by for loop? You are all aware of for loop. Yes. How to assign user defined value to X? What do you mean? What do you mean by user defined value? User defined value in the sense any normal vector. I don't understand the meaning of it. Mamu. Yes, any vector. Yes, you can. Let me show here. Let me show here and see the console window. It is the console window. For example, x is equal to 1 to 10. 1 to 10. If I call x, it shows the value in between 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? It checks. And you can compare. For example, if I say x greater than 0, it returns all the logic values. Why? Because all the values assigned to the x are positive values only, right? So this is the way to assign. This is the way to assign. I hope you got the answer. I hope you got the answer. Yes. For loops. And you know how to write the code using the for loop in the C language or in the MATLAB. So for loops are most commonly used for iterating over the elements of an object. What are the elements? Elements may be vector or list. For example, I'm just using the for loop for printing numbers from 1 to 10. 1 to 10. For I is just for I is increasing from 1 to 10. What I'm just printing here, print of I. You can observe one thing here. The plus symbol is used, and don't think that it is arithmetic operation. The plus symbol is used for what? The code is just entering into the second line. As I said, if the code is entering into the second line, ultimately the prompt will be changed from this greater than symbol to plus symbol, right? So don't think that it is an arithmetic operation. It's a simple code here for printing the values from 1 to 10. Got it, right? This loop takes the I variable and each iteration of the loop, it gives the values 1 to 10, executes the code within the curly braces, and then the loop exits, right? So simple example for loop. Another example, a vector is defined. That vector is taking 4 characters, A, B, C, D, and the vector is with 4 characters. And what is the code here? Print of x of I. While I is moving from 1 to 4, I'm just printing x of I. So what is x of I? When I equal to 1, x of 1 will be printed. When I equal to 2, x of 2 will be printed. So that is the index is 2 in the sense in the vector the character is B. Index is 3, the character is C. So like that you can use the for loop. Simple example. Another example is taken. That is generation of a sequence based on length of x. That is sequence based on a length of x. So how do you check? I in sequence along x. That is how long the loop repeats, how long the I value will be increased until it reaches the maximum length. Until it reaches the maximum length. For example, if I say I in 1 to 2, how many values will be displayed here? Only 2 values will be displayed. If you don't know the length of the particular vector, you can use this particular function, sequence along of x. You can take the variable I varying from 1 to the maximum length x, right? The sequence along function is commonly used conjunction with the for loops in order to generate an integer sequence based on the length of an object, right? So basically the sequence along function is used whenever you are not aware of the length of any vector that you are supposed to use in the for loop, right? Simple thing. Another way to write the code for letter in x, print letter. Until and unless the letter is existing in the x, it cannot execute the code. And once it letter is existing, it returns the letter and it prints the written in the console window. It is the another way for using for loop, right? Simple way. So already I think it is taken. So single line, using the single line. No need to use braces. The main intention here is, if at all, if you have the single command inside the braces, no need to use the braces. This particular single line is enough. Can we define x in the for loop instead of defining separately? Yes. Uh, you know about global variables and local variables, right? Global variables and local variables. So that is if you define the for loop in the, x variable in the for loop, x variable in the for loop, what happens actually here? Nothing will happen. Based on the I value, it returns the x value. It returns the x value. Let us check here. As you said, let us take the same code here. So you want me to check this one? Yeah. Yeah. So definitely it throws error. Why? Because x is not defined. So now tell me, what do you want me to write? What do you mean by defining of x inside the for loop? Mr. 420 roll number. Malesh. As you asked, can we define x in the for loop instead of defining separately? So now tell me, how do you want me to define x? Yes, as you said, if I say x of I equal to some 1, I'm defining. Let me check here. Let me check. See here. So what is the error I got here? Unexpected equal to. Now tell me, what is your intention in defining? Yes, you check it. You check it and ask me if you get any error actually here. Usually here, using the for loop, we are doing operation or we are just calling some value from the vector which is already there, right? Right. And similarly, we can use more number of for loops, especially for matrix operations. You are all aware of it actually here. And for calling a matrix or for representation of a matrix, I'm just using two for loops here. That is called nested for loop. Nested for loop, right? While loops. While loops. You know what is while loop? So while loop in the sense after execution of the code, that is the loop will be repeated until the condition in the while loop is satisfied. So while loop begins by testing the condition. If it is true, then they execute the loop. Once the loop body is executed, the condition is tested again and so forth until the condition is false. Right? So for example, here simple code is taken here. Count is first assigned with a value 0. So while count is less than 10, it is printing the count value. And count is equal to count plus 1. So that is in each and every iteration, it checks the condition. First 0, no, 0 is less than 10. Yes, enter the loop. And next iteration, 0 plus 1, 1. Count is 1, 1 is less than 10. Enter the loop. Next iteration. And like that, it repeats the iterations until the condition is satisfied. Right? So here you have to be very cautious while using the while loop. It may lead to infinite loop. It may lead to infinite loop like your C language. Right? While loops can potentially result in infinite loop if not written properly. Another example here. Z is assigned with value 5. All right. So here AND operation is used here. Logical AND operation is used here. Z greater than or equal to 3 and Z less than or equal to 10 condition is given in the while loop. While loop. So here again in the while loop, I am using if else. A simple code is written here. Simple code is written. You check the code. You try to run the code in the R Studio, and you can just check the output. That is while loop and if else condition is used in the program, right? So if that is this condition is satisfied until this condition is false, it enters the loop. If it enters the loop, the coin will be assigned with a particular binomial random variable value, or binomial 1 comma 1 comma 0.5, or binomial in the sense that binomial density function, or binomial random variable, you can say. Simple example for while loop. Conditions are always evaluated from left to right. See here. For example, in the code, if Z were less than 3, so what is the Z value here? Z is greater than or equal to 3 and Z is less than or equal to 10. In between 3 and 10, it enters the loop. For example, if the Z were less than 3, the second test would not have been evaluated. And that is, it won't check if else. Ultimately, it just come out of the while loop. That is what my intention here. Always from left to right, it checks. Right? Anyway, you're aware of this. You might have written a number of programs in the C language. Just how to use this in the R language, I am explaining here. Next and break. You know what is next. It is the syntax for it. Next is used to skip an iteration in the loop. So here, how do you skip? And whenever the for loop is taken, when I is moving from 1 to 10, 1 to 100. So here, if I is moving from 1 to 100, inside the for loop, if condition is checked. If at all, if I is less than or equal to 20, and it is asking the code to come out of the for loop. Come out of the for loop. Right? Break. Break is used to exit the loop immediately. Right? You know about a next and break in the C language. The similar way you can use the next and break in the R language. Functions. You know how to define the function. User defined function, how to create the user defined function. So functions can be passed as arguments to other functions. That is the application of function, and this is very handy for the various applications like lapply, sapply, and even the functions can be nested. And simple example, sample functions in the R language. For example, how to define the function here. F is a function. It shows that the F is function here, right? And if I don't give any argument, it is empty function. And if I don't any body also, it is empty function with empty argument, right? And it says therefore it is whenever I check the class of F, yes, the F is assigned with a function is called, right? Whenever I execute, as I don't write, that is, as I am not writing anything in the body, it returns the result as null. If I write anything in the body, if I call the F of, that is, yes, I am Srikanth. If I write print, I am Srikanth. Whenever I call F of this closed parenthesis, it returns, yes, I am Srikanth. It displays that particular text. Simple program, simple function. Like here, for example, concatenation of hello, two strings here. One is hello, another one is world, right? So here, whenever I execute this, so it is with the empty argument, but not with empty body. And the body is having two strings in concatenation. So therefore, it is returning hello world, right? For the basic function, we can add an argument that determines how many times hello world is printed. That also that can be done number of times. So here I need to use the argument here. That argument is what? Number, and it is initialized with the value 1. If I don't mention any value here, by default it is going to take 1. See here, f of, I am not mentioning here the any value here. So actually initially it itself is defined or assigned with pre-assigned with 1. It returns hello world. It returns hello world only once. Only once. If I define the number of times here, and if I pass the arguments as 2, and earlier the number num is assigned with 1, now it is replaced with 2, and it is displaying 2 times. 2 times. And here in this R language, another thing you need to understand here is, see here. So what is the code is a code execution, code is executing here. Which code is executing here? Concatenation of hello and another no, this one is missing here. Please see here. Argument matching. So basically here, for example, I'm defining the function f, and f is taking 4 arguments. 4 arguments. That is, I'm just defining the function for finding the variance of any density function. Any density function or autocorrelation of density functions, two density functions. And ultimately, what I'm supposed to give the give argument, what I'm supposed to give the arguments ultimately to find the variance, and I may need to provide the mean value sometimes, and also I'm supposed to give the mean square value. By using mean and mean square value, I can find the variance. Why? Because the variance of the random variable is, formula is what? E of x square minus E of x whole square. That is, E of x square is mean square value. E of x is mean value. Using the mean square and mean values, I can find out the variance. I would like to write the code for finding the variance, and for which I need 2 arguments, the mean value and mean square value, right? So argument matching, in the sense R functions arguments can be matched positionally or by name. For example, here f of mean comma mean square value, these 2 are the arguments. The mean is given with x and mean square is given with y. And while calling the function, f of x comma y must be used as a syntax. And f of mean equal to 2 and a mean square equal to 10, and that must be the syntax. And even here in the R language, the advantage is even you can change the order, and the first argument may be mean square and second argument may be mean value, and only thing is the names must be matched. I'll show here. Can be matched positionally or by name. Positional matching just means that R assigns the first value to the first argument, the second value to the second argument. See there. Simple. What is the function here? N comma mean and standard deviation. How many arguments it is taking? 3 arguments, right? So whenever I say 100, by default, as per the position, N will be given with 100. As per the position, mean will be given as 2. Standard deviation will be given as 1 by default. Another example I'll show. Actually, it is not written. So here, while specifying the function arguments by name, it doesn't matter in what order you specify them. So in the sense here, for example here, 102 comma 1. Instead of 102 comma 1, R norm of 102 comma 1, if I give R norm of SD equal to 2, N equal to 200, mean equal to 5. Actually, the order is N must be first, mean must be second, SD must be second. If I don't mention any name, by position it assigns the arguments. If I mention the names, you can change the order of the function. You can just give the mean value first, or standard deviation second, and N value last. Like mean equal to 2, SD equal to 5 and N equal to 200, and like that you can change the art. That is the main intention here, intention of this slide, right? When specifying the function arguments by name, it doesn't matter in what order you specify them. We can mix positional matching with matching by name, and you can even mix, that is, second argument, if you don't give the name, mention the name, by default it assigns to mean value, right? But if you mention the first one with the SD, so it assigns to only SD, even it is third argument. Function arguments can also be partially matched, which is useful when interactive. For example, if the argument is a big length, that is sequence of the density function equal to some length of the density function equal to, like that I have given the argument. And simply if I say len, it returns, it takes the value. That is called partial matching. The order of operations when argument is, see here, check for exact match for the named argument. That's the first case. And other next one is check for the partial match. The next one is first positional match. So this is the order of checking the arguments while writing the functions. Lazy evaluation. So here, sometimes arguments to the functions are evaluated lazily. So they are evaluated only as needed in the body of the function. Simple thing. I'm writing the code. I'm writing the function as f of a comma b, f of a comma b. But I'm not interested in passing the arguments a and b, and only I'm writing the code which can use only the first argument a. That is also works here. That also works here. See there, function of a comma b. So there, the body is what? A square. Though I am taking the two arguments here, the body is utilizing only a. So here you can call f of 2. By default, it is going to be assigned to a. That is called lazy evaluation. Another example here, function of a comma. But if you write function of a comma b inside the body, if you write, if you use a and b, and if you just f of 45, if you give, it executes, but it throws error. It throws error. Why? Because after the print of a is executed, the print of b won't be executed. Why? Because the b is missing. Why? Because the R compiler is, our language is not compiler, it is interpreter. It is interpreter. That is line by line execution. Another argument is dot dot dot, triple dot. For example, here I would like to use the built-in function. I would like to use the built-in function. The built-in function is taking 10 arguments. 10 arguments. And out of the 10 arguments, I would like to change the value of only one argument, and all the other values I would like to keep them as it is, default values, and only one value I would like to change. I repeat, I have the built-in function. In the built-in function, I have 10 arguments, and the 10 arguments are given with pre-assigned value, predefined value, and out of which I would like to change only one value in it. Let it be first value. And I don't need to write all the other arguments which are already fixed in the predefining the function. While defining the function, you can use just dot 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 like this. For the function, plot is the function here. The plot arguments are x, y, type, and x label, y label, title. These are all the arguments to plot. And I'm just using dot dot dot. I'm just using dot dot dot. And I want to change the type. The type, that is dots to line. For example, the plot function may be earlier. The default function is dotted plot. I would like to use them as line plot. Just I want to, that is, I'll change the type only to L. Type only to L. And the rest of the arguments are kept as it is. And there I can use this dot dot dot. Another one is scoping rules. Scoping rules in the sense, here, for example, I'm defining the variables. I'm defining the variables. That is, in the defining the variables, in calling the variables, you need to follow the order. For example, X is the variable and defined twice in the program, but one is defined globally and one is defined in the package. And here, there, it is going to, the compiler is going to follow the order. And the variable will have the scope, the same way which you have studied in the C language. The variable will have the scope, and whether it works globally or whether it works in the loop or in a function or in a particular environment, right? So here, when R tries to bind a value to a symbol, first it searches through a series of environments to find the appropriate value. Why? Because in one environment, it is assigned with one value. In another environment, it is assigned with another value. So it checks when you are working on the command line and need to retrieve the value of the object. So here, the order is like this. First, it searches in the global environment, in the workspace. And next, it searches the namespaces of each package on the search list. See here. When I say search, when I just type search in the console window, it shows like this. What do you mean by this? First, global environment. Next, in the package. And after that, starts package. Starts package. That is, the search list can be found by using the search function. So first one is global environment or the user's workspace is always the first element. And then the base package is the last. Base package is the last. And the scoping rules actually here. So the scoping rules of the language determine how the value associated with the free variable is in a function. So it uses which type of scoping? Lexical scoping or static scoping. Lexical scoping means what? Lexical scoping means the values of the free variables are such in the environment where the function is defined. So every time I'm saying environment. So what do you mean by environment actually here? It is a collection of pairs. X is a symbol and 3.14 might be its value, for example. Every environment has a parent environment and it is possible for an environment to have multiple children. That is, in one environment, I may define X is 3.14. In another environment, I may define the X with another value, some 2.18. So in such a scenario here, whenever you use the variable X, the compiler will go in a hierarchical way. First, it checks in the global environment, and lastly, it checks in the base package. And in the R language, we have some dates and times functions, predefined one. So here, dates are represented by the date class, and they can be coursed from the character string, like as dot date. If I say as dot date of, so here the reference value takes as 11/1970. For example, if I say today's, if I say date as dot date of today's date, if I say it returns, I'll show here. For example, here unclass of X. If X is assigned with 1970.11/1970, here the number of days up to this day is 0. If I say as dot date of, as on the particular date, how many days? It counts the days, whereas time counts the seconds. Time counts the seconds, date counts the days. From which date? 1/1/1970. So that is 2/1/1970, how many days? 1. 1/1/70, how many days? 0. Like that. See here example. Times in R. It checks the system time. Sys.time returns the system time. In the morning while preparing the slides, I checked. So it is system time, my system time. And if I check the class of it, and it is giving that option. Right. So inside this particular object, so these are the things that will be displayed here. So that is here, M day in the sense month day, month, year, week day. and what is the hour, what is the minute, what is the second at this particular position, at this particular position, right? So here if I check weekday, yes, first day of the week. It is the first day of the week. Similarly, just this part is already discussed in the first chapter itself. How to define the vectors. Vectorized operations, and you can give input as vector and you can get the output as vector. For example, square root of 1 to 9. 1 to 9 is a vector passed as argument to the function. Output is also a vector, that is the square root of individual value in the vector 1 to 9. Similar, sometimes you can give vector as input, matrix as output, some operations. So here with this we can conclude the second chapter. In the second chapter we have seen control statements like if else, while, for loops, and all the examples are taken, and how to find the date and the time in using the R language, and also how to check the scope and what are the scope rules. So these are the things we have discussed in the second chapter, right? So with this we can conclude the second chapter. Thank you. I'm going to share the slides. Thank you.